Hello and greetings to this channel and to this pick a card reading. So the title of the reading today is what is the upcoming obstacle, perhaps block, but an obstacle, a hurdle, and how are you already sort of setting up and preparing to kind of jump over. So it's a pick a card, so you know the deal. We've got 3 cards to choose from. We've got pre-shuffled cards. Our first pile is the Son of Wands. We have 5 of Wands. And we have Mother of Swords. Okay, so the timestamps, the groups are below. The timestamps, join me there. We're going to start with pile 1. And as we've already said, we've got the Son of Wands there. So generally I like to start off with some oracle cards just to be able to give us a little bit of a flavour of some of the, the themes that we're going to be encountering. We've got Truth and Inner Peace. I actually did this with those. These cards are so beautiful. So we have Truth, the first one, and then we have Inner Peace. And we've got some other oracles as well to give us some further clarity on what we're looking at here. So we've got, let's put that one there actually, we've got Flattery, Convention, and Influence. From the Hermetic Tarot, we've got 7 of Pentacles. And from this one, we have these, well, let's look at this. So we've got 2 of Coins, we've got 3 of Vessels, as well as the Star in reverse. Okay, so let's have a little look. So at the moment, feel as though, this one I didn't actually say, 7 of Pentacles, but in the Hermetic Tarot, it's the Lord of Success, unfulfilled. So, I don't know if anybody else has these Hermetic Tarot cards. They are pretty savage in comparison to the traditional, the kind of based, or the Waitesmith ones are based on these ones, because I believe these would have come beforehand. But still, some of them, they're not as gentle as the other ones. So please do not be deterred by the Lord of Success unfulfilled. It sounds a bit damning, but that could be a good place to start, perhaps. So potentially, I feel as though at the moment you may be sort of in a position you become resigned, perhaps. Maybe that sounds negative, but resigned to your current circumstances. So previously you may have felt as though you can kind of, like a lot of us, feel as though those manifestations, those dreams and aspirations are coming to fruition. And it feels as though it's like just in front of us, around the next corner, the next bend. And you perhaps have had numerous sensations of feeling as though, it's going to be coming in tomorrow, it's going to be coming in next week, or it's immediate. But after kind of sensing and anticipating that immediacy, there still is this kind of gap, so it hasn't quite come in yet. So as a result of that repeated feeling as though it's here any minute now, if I open the door it's going to be there, and it's not, hasn't been delivered quite yet. So if you're now in a position where you're like, okay, fair enough, I will just wait. You're never going to miss what's meant for you. So you know that you will always be moved to the position in order for you to receive. But if it's not here quite yet, you're becoming more comfortable with the unknown and how that may come into fruition in your life. So you're a little bit more at peace with that sort of waiting. Like any sort of harvest, you would have to put it in the ground and wait for allow that plant to mature before you could take the things that you knew when you plant the seed will going to want to come to being. So you're more comfortable now with that, because, but also I think as though potentially in that sort of almost like holding time, like a holding pattern, it could actually be a good time to kind of check that those goals and aspirations are genuine reflections of who you are now. So if they're like aspirations that you've kind of maybe created in childhood, or teenage years or early adulthood, are those things still reflections of you as you've come to know yourself? So as you continue to develop, would you still want to be the goal that you set when you were a teenager or younger? And it's not to say that that would be wrong. That's part of a lot of people's discovery of themselves. It's kind of rediscovering the kind of person you originally were, and then how you may have kind of gone down different paths, and you're returning to some childhood personality traits and how you naturally are. But it could be whilst you're waiting for these things to come in, it's definitely a good time to have a look at to see where you're going, and is that still where you want? And if some of those goals and aspirations may be more traditional, perhaps maybe there is like, when I looked at these cards a little bit earlier, the images I was having in my head was that you're kind of like an animal, like a body, and you've kind of seen this like elegant gazelle perhaps, and you like, oh yeah, wow, this gazelle gets around with like 4 legs, right? So that in this image you don't have those 4 legs yet. You are the body of the creature, but you're waiting. So perhaps you may have been a bit impatient previously that you don't have the 4 legs, but if you give it time, those 4 legs are going to grow in, and you'll be able to be as glorious and as delicate as this gazelle. And as you're looking like on this grassland, you can kind of see something moving in the grass, and you're like, oh, this is not a gazelle, and you identify that actually this is a snake that's there. And there's no danger from the snake, but you're like, wow, this creature can get from like A to B without having to have those 4 legs. So if it's movement that I want, you don't have to have movement in the original way you thought you would be able to do that. That there's this creature that is almost quite sort of seductive in the way it moves. And you're like, wow, actually, do you know what? I could actually get around like that if I moved in a similar fashion, or I'm used it as an inspiration. Obviously, you don't need to be one or the other. You can be anything in between, but it's just opening your mind to kind of comprehend that you can make movement in thousands of ways. It doesn't have to just be set on this one type. So perhaps you were having sort of feeling compelled in one direction, but actually aspiring to something else, which could be the direct opposite of that. So as a way of making sure that we're going in a direction that we want to be, that we'd actually be happy if we arrived in, it's good to take that time to kind of get it. Or maybe like another, if you wanted like a tomato plant, but you put in seeds for like a pumpkin, then when you got the pumpkin, would you be satisfied? You'd be like, well, I actually still want the tomato. So it's important to check what it is that you want to do. And then in terms of sort of like the 2 of coins as well, I see you, once you've decided what thing is moving you and actually is more exciting for you, you'll be in a position to go for it, to take steps in the real world that are going to get you towards your end goal, and to feel some sort of freedom in that time that you've looked, you've assessed, and you're like, actually, I don't want to be the gazelle. I may not necessarily want to be the snake, but I want something that's different. But it's essentially closer to what your natural nature is. So I think that's kind of interesting to see. Actually, I'm just seeing there's like 2 snakes here. So we've got one here and then one on there as well. And there's also fish. Do you know what I mean? Like fish don't have legs. They don't need to. So it's really important to just in this time of waiting and anticipating, figure out what it is you want. And sometimes I feel as though, definitely from my experience, sometimes when you are in those holding patterns, it's kind of like the universe being like, if we give you this in like 6 months, are you going to want it? And if in 6 months or even 3 weeks time, you say you don't want it, then there would be no reason for the universe to provide you with, when what you want is something else. So when you're on the right path, the things are going to come in quicker. And also with the star card as well, in being in reverse, being able to move with what genuinely motivates and inspires you is going to be quite compelling. So I think that's potentially what you'll be looking at in the next couple of months throughout the rest of the year. I'm just thinking, do we need any additional cards? I think we're okay. I think we got the message from that. So that was reading for pile 1. Okay, so just bear with me. Let's move over. Let's go to pile 2. That's the 5, wasn't it? Okay, so hello and greetings to this reading. This is pile 2, and we've had the 5 of Wands. So generally I like to start the readings with an oracle card, as it gives us a little bit of a flavour to what we're going to be looking at and seeing throughout the rest of the reading. It can also soften some of the blows, some of those harsher cards that kind of come up sometimes. I think it's nice to enter gently. So we've got community as 1. We've got delight, wonderful, and purity. Okay, sounds good so far. As another oracle card, we've got discovery and inheritance. I think there was another one with that. Yeah, and resourcefulness. Okay. Ooh. Let's have a look. So in terms of cards from the Hermetic Tarot, we have Ace of Pentacles in reverse. What they say for the Ace of Pentacles is Lord of Root and the Power of Earth in reverse. And we got 3 of Pentacles, so Lord of Material Work in reverse. And we have Champion of Vessels for this one, Crown of Wands in reverse, and we've got the 9 of Wands upright. So when I had a little look at these cards earlier, I felt that perhaps it was like a continuation really of the first reading, or maybe like a slightly different stage. Like the first reading was or pile 1 was more about just checking and spending the time to make sure that what you're aspiring to actually would genuinely make you happy. I feel as though this one is you've probably spent time reassessing goals, aspirations. You've tended to wounds, done activities that have brought you joy and kind of bring your life in a slightly different direction to where you would have thought. You're spending time in things that genuinely delight you, things that you may have previously considered starting, like hobbies. It could be learning an instrument. Maybe when you were a kid you started instruments and then you never got very far, so you feel like, oh, no point in me learning a new instrument, because when I was 8, 9, 10, 12, I didn't do it. But you're an adult now, so you perhaps gone back to learning an instrument that you've been really motivated and moved to do. It could be hobbies that you've never, or you've considered taking up, like, I don't know, it could be like skateboarding or something. I know I personally considered skateboarding, but felt like, oh, I should have learned that when I was a child, so I just didn't bother. But now, as a 37-year-old woman, I have gone back to skateboarding, or to that initial interest. And it just brings so much joy and excitement, and you're not perturbed that you may look peculiar or odd, being, an older person taking up those hobbies. The examples that I just gave for like the bass and the skateboarding, those are things that I have recently sort of taken up again, and particularly with the bass. I know my bass teachers told me, like, they're teaching people who are like in their 90s who've just picked up bass. So it's never too late to do those things. But I'd previously been under the impression that, I shouldn't bother. So perhaps you're kind of just being freer, moving in a light-hearted manner, tending to perhaps past wounds, and this is going to be bringing you into connection with different people, and also people who kind of have that similar outlook, or that at least that interest, and each of sort of these different pathways have contact points of a variety of people. So your community in which you're kind of frequenting, navigating, is changing, and I feel as though when you do things that are motivated from your soul, from your your diligence and being authentic to yourself, other things will fall away, because you potentially won't have the time to do that. If you're doing things you really enjoy, you'll be able to put things down that maybe not serving you, as well as moving with how your soul wants you to, and it will kind of produce this sort of purity of spirit. If you're only doing things that your soul and your spirit is telling you to do, then essentially there can't be much wrong there. And I think you'll be discovering things that have been sitting, waiting to be tended to. And as you tend to those things, they will blossom and bring you so much joy that you didn't even know that one single activity could bring to you. So we've got, also these are the ones down here. So we've got the Ace of Pentacles in reverse. So potentially it's about moving, maybe like I was saying before, moving in a way that is, you wouldn't have been able to imagine. Perhaps 3 or 6 months ago, you would never have imagined that your day-to-day would be full of all these different tasks, all these new people. So lots of things are going to be looking or morphing in a different way. And you may kind of, as a result, be moving away from other people. If you've been kind of building up, your past life with other people, you may not have you might not be taking them with you to this new place. And you probably feel, if you're in a position where you are doing these new activities and finding this new source of joy within you, it may not feel, sort of on an internal level difficult, but on an external level, it may be challenging. People may notice that you might not be as available, or you may not have as much interest in doing the things that, they may be attached to or used to seeing you do. So I think perhaps the obstacle, or maybe not even an obstacle, maybe you'll just blow past that and you won't be perturbed, but it's important not to dim your light in order to keep the people from the past life happy and content. Your sole job is to be yourself, and you can expect things to change when you're doing that. You're going to be a multi-passionate person, and it's going to bring about that joy, which will feel kind of overflow. You'll just be like a ball of light walking through town, walking through the countryside, wherever it is that you live, where is it that you are. You'll have multiple springs in your step. And this is not to be deemed by anybody else wanting or expecting you to do X, Y, or Z anymore. That's the old you. Okay, I think that is everything for part 2. Okay, so hello. Oh, no, go on. Hello and greetings to this reading. So this is pile 3, which was Mother of Swords. That was the one you picked. And as I've been saying, I like to start off the readings with the oracle ones, because they can kind of, you know, in the oracle deck, or these oracle decks, I don't have all oracle decks obviously, but in these ones, there's only great things. Sometimes some of the cards can, you know, be upsetting, depending on the how it's meeting you, the context, right? But generally I find these ones are a nice, gentle introduction if there are going to be some challenges in the reading coming up. So the first ones we have that was shuffled for this pile was Solitude, and we've got Release. Okay, and then we had these two as well. So we had Loss. There's this one. And we had Bluff as well. Do we have any more? No? Okay, we had 2 from the Hermetic Tarot. So, I don't know, I've said previously, I don't know if anybody's has this Hermetic Tarot, but gosh, they're pretty savage in the imagery, in the titles, in some of the words that they would use. You know, if you were looking up a traditional like Rider and Waite tarot, there may be just like one word that was a bit harsh, but it's like if you use a little book that comes with this one, it's literally just, you know, a stream of unpleasant, harsh terms, but nevertheless we can look beyond and above those. So we had 6 of Pentacles, which is called the Lord of Material Success, and we also had Death in reverse. So the Death card is the child of the great transformer, indeed. And then we also had this one, we have 9 of Coins. We had the Keeper of Vessels and the Keeper of Swords, and they were all in reverse as well. Okay, so this one, I did have a little look before I popped out into town earlier today about this one. This one is part 3. It's really been on my mind, the images, and I was walking through the park. I was like, oh yeah, just kind of clarifying, formulating. So the image that I have in my head for this this pile was kind of maybe like in a thriller, don't be alarmed, but a thriller or like a horror movie. You know, if somebody's being like pursued by some unknown or sort of shadowy creature, person or entity thing, the image I have is like this person, which potentially could be you, kind of coming up against like a bit of a wall. Not a wall where there's like literally no options. The person could kind of slightly come around the wall, like if you run up here, and they could go around, so it's not impossible to like get away from whatever's pursuing them. But the image I have is this person kind of getting to here and actually taking a breath and, you know, assuming in on the face. And this person has the option of going around and continuing to be pursued by whatever it is that is following them or pursuing them, but they're taking that breath and they're about to turn around and face head on whatever this potential shadow is. So like in sort of some horrors or maybe some of the best horrors and thrillers, sometimes what they would do throughout the films that they wouldn't show you what the pursuing shadow was. They would wait to the end, and then perhaps you would, I don't know, it would be discovered that it's actually just a person or a person in a mask, whatever the entity is. It's not for me to say personally, but you could be at that point where you're just facing whatever has potentially in the past tormented you or kind of took away your peace. And one of the things that I was also thinking about was when, it reminds me of when I used to have this dream where somebody was chasing me or something was chasing me, and then I was so frightened from the dream I kind of woke up into this like lucid dream state where then I could like change whatever, you know, you realize you're dreaming and you have the ability to pick what's going to happen next. So you're in control. So you're like, oh, actually, instead of this garage door opening and whatever menacing creatures coming to do whatever they, you know, whatever they wish with me, I'm in control and I can choose what it is. So in that dream, I changed it to when the doors opened, it was like a fairground or something, as opposed to what had been possessing me. And every time I'd have that same dream over and over again, it would always be petrifying initially, but there was comfort as soon as I got to the point in the dream where I was able to change it. So I feel as though you're in that position where you are either, you're just in that bit where you're kind of bracing yourself and like, right, I'm going to look here. What is the problem? What is pursuing me? And potentially you're going to be looking through disguises, how things may have kind of tending to wounds that would have, you know, that kind of afflict, I think, most people. I don't know anybody who hasn't sort of come to a conclusion as a result of other people's treatment, which perhaps is not right, which doesn't reflect how magnificent and great you are, tending to how different losses in life may have made you feel, or how you're still kind of potentially losing out as a result of trying to implement some sort of dogma given to you either by family or by, you know, just society as a whole. And you're going to be going back to some of those sort of tender parts. So tender parts that are perhaps have been hurtful, but also tender parts that are still there and just require some attention, require some love and tenderness, and to kind of parent or respond to those things in a kind way, as you might do to a child. If a child came and told you something, you know, I mean, you might not treat them in the same way as you might talk to yourself. So loving and tending to some of those parts of you will allow the pressure, the gas to be released from some of those negativities, and you can just look and be like, oh, fair enough, do you know what I mean? So you might be looking in, finding aspects of your personality that perhaps you felt, or maybe, you know, we're all kind of encouraged to think that some traits are less desirable than others, but I think it's important to look at some of the ways that some of those traits are generally prescribed. I'm thinking also about sort of words. This is kind of in the opposite direction maybe of some of the things you may be discovering about yourself, but I always think about loyalty as one of those words and terminology that is generally considered to be a good trait, to be loyal. And maybe like in a romantic relationship, yes, but, you know, outside of a romantic relationship, if anybody ever addresses me as, oh, you're so loyal, you're so, particularly with something like you're a service you're paying for. I can remember my gym, what they call gym instructor or personal trainer, like, you're so loyal. And that was like pretty much the last time that I went with them, because they were implying, and I understand that they were aware that actually they weren't that reliable. They didn't really do the things, they say, next week we're going to be doing this about your food. What food are you consuming? Bring that in, keep track of it, and then we'll get on top of it. And then you come in next week and then they forgot about it, so you didn't ever get any you didn't actually get the experience that you might expect from a personal trainer. And the fact that they described me as loyal meant that they recognised that by rights I shouldn't actually still be there. I shouldn't I should be with somebody else, or that they should be doing better. But I'm still there, they're doing less. And they were describing loyal as positive, but in that moment I was like, no, this is not good. So for me, loyal, like I said, outside of a romantic context, kind of implies that you should be somewhere else by now. You should have left that scenario, but you haven't, because of your loyalty. And does that loyalty serve you in any way? And if the answer is no, then you're really only doing other people favours. And I think that's potentially one of the reasons why loyalty is described as, or seen as something positive. But you should be somewhere because it makes sense, not because it's easier for everybody else. And there'll be a point where you need to put yourself as the focus. And maybe sort of selfish is like another word that has a negative connotation to it. But essentially, when everybody's here for a separate reason, so why would it be my reason to be here to tend to make other people have, I don't know, yeah, I'm not sure about, I spent much time on selfish, but I think essentially that is what we're here to do, is to do us, right? And it may inconvenience other people when we're like, actually, no, I don't want to do that. And if you describe me as being selfish, then I'll take it. But so some of these qualities, they're all as good as each other. And I think when we can detach from some of those connotations that historically those words have, you can just feel freer to be yourself. You might not think of yourself as having, if you went to a job interview, they'd be like, oh, describe your worst trait. You're like, well, I haven't got any worst traits. It might not go that well. You might still want to show that you have some reflection if you are going for a job. To say you haven't got any, they might interpret that as, never having done anything wrong. But you can still show them that you are reflective, you're observant. But, I just think it doesn't serve us as people to think of some of these traits in a negative. So as you're looking back and addressing whatever it is that's kind of been pursuing you or causing you to feel tormented, what you'll be doing is embracing some of those qualities and feeling confident in yourself and feeling full, embracing and attending to those parts of us that have been forced to kind of live in a shadow when really there's no reason to. And if everything's in balance and you're like, a half decent person, then there's really nothing to be too concerned about. So I feel as though potentially then you will feel more strong and more independent in yourself. We can see these potentially like cards like the Nine of Coins going back into the reverse. You'll feel able to sustain yourself and not codependent on other people. I mean, if people tell you you've got terrible traits, then you need them around in order for to be able to assist you. But it's like you may not need anybody at all. And to have your mind and your heart free once you've tended to some of these qualities, is going to see such an upsurge in joy, and be able to pursue your path. And essentially everybody's path is what, just to be themselves and to move in directions in ways that would surprise probably everybody. I feel like nobody's supposed to be, you know, standard, expected. Everybody is unusual in some way, and sometimes we don't even know how unusual we may be. But you know, you're not looking to cause harm to anybody else, so there's nothing to be concerned about there. So potentially over the next few months, or this you know, it could actually be a longer process, particularly with things that have kind of pursued you for a long time. But what you've already done is kind of took a breath, paused, turned, and in that confrontation of that shadow, you'll see whatever it is that's coming towards you, and be no longer scared or frightened of your own motivations. So I hope you look after yourself in the next, well, forever, but particularly during these times, and release shame, any shame that's associated with what you're discovering about yourself. So I said, unless you're, I don't know if anybody ever is, you know, like put on the earth to be like a bad person. Obviously lots of bad things do happen, but essentially, unless you're not causing harm to anybody else, so release the pain, and see what shape you take with an open heart when you're looking at yourself.